So I want to make a real quick distinction here because we have been using the words interchangeably, emotions and feelings. So emotions is that energy piece of it. It's the sensations that we have. So the sensations of grief, the sensations of anger, the sensations of joy. And when we're talking about emotions, it's that energy you feel in your body. And when we say feelings, what I want you to understand is feelings are kind of like a judgment, it's a value, like happy. I'm happy about this. I'm angry about this. Okay, it's a descriptive word, but it is actually, according to Carl Jung, rational. It's rational because it is tied to a thought process.
I love how you said that.
Bad to me. This feels unfair. I feel betrayed. Betrayal is an evaluation and a judgment. So you're trying to share your feelings, which is your qualitatively based evaluation of something, and someone comes back and says you're being emotional. Don't assume that they're accurate. People are uncomfortable even with feelings, even just saying the words, I feel betrayed by that. You will probably have some of the emotion that goes with that feeling. And people who are uncomfortable with emotions will want to shut it down. Good morning and welcome back to Simply Human, our YouTube channel and podcast. I'm Christina Caro, licensed clinical psychologist, and this is my partner in crime, Karen Lee Linsky, executive leadership and self-trust coach. Good morning, Karen.
Good morning. And I just want to say hello to those people who are joining our channel for the first time, because this channel really explores a range of human experiences and provides insight, guidances, and practices to help you feel more confident, courageous, and curious to be the best version of yourself. Now, in the last few episodes, we actually recapped the journey of discovering the JOHARI Window. And what's most interesting is that this piece that we're exploring now is really about the hidden. And what's so great about the hidden, when we explored it, it's those things that it's known to us, but it's not known to others. And what's so cool is, Christine and I know with our clients, that when you talk about your hidden, it actually makes relationships and life just so much better. Because think about it. When you get to first understand better and then express your hidden needs, your hidden thoughts, and your hidden expectations, those that we've talked about, it's amazing how much relationships begin to be different. And today we're expressing something that I thought is very exciting for me, which is about emotions, hidden emotions, because some of that is also a lot based on cultural upbringing that we'll be talking about in a little bit. And really, if you think about the hidden emotions, while needs and thought and expectations can be challenging to share, emotions is probably the most carefully guarded experience. So why do we keep them hidden, Christina?
Well, there's a lot of reasons why we keep our feelings and our emotions in the hidden quadrant. So that's known to self, known to me, and not necessarily known to others because I haven't shared them. I've kept them hidden. Now, some main sort of big picture reasons why that might be the case. A big one is cultural and social factors. So there may be cultural messaging about emotional expression. And Karen, this made me think about you. I was just wondering, because this is really common in Asian culture about keeping strong emotions hidden. Like, did you ever receive any kind of messaging growing up? Because you're Chinese American, but your parents were Chinese, correct? And your grandmothers were Chinese.
Yes. And it's so interesting because we talk about this a lot, the role of saving face. And I was trying to figure out really, what does saving face, what did it come from? And so I went to ChatGPT and asked. And really, it's interesting. It's about maintaining social harmony. It's about avoiding the public displays that might cause embarrassment or discomfort. Why can't we be authentic? It's like when I enter the world, I got to be this, like, life is perfect, like we do on social media. Life is perfect. Life looks good. Everything's good. Nobody would really know who I really was. I remember that my mother would be silent when she disappeared. And that actually led me into how I behaved and having imposter syndrome, because I thought whatever I said and no one responded right away, there'd be a silent, and I would automatically think I didn't know what I was talking about or wasn't accepted. And so I think that was one of the things to make me hide some of my emotions and what I said.
Wow. That's a great insight to have that came from child. Like my family, I got contradictory messages because on the one hand,
Wow.
it was a pretty expressive family around the dinner table. I don't know if folks remember the TV show All in the Family, where it was just always, Archie Bunker yelling at his son-in-law and his daughter getting emotional and upset. And my brothers say, we're just like the Bunkers, because it was a very expressive family. But at the same time, I also got the message, especially for me, if I was getting emotional around sensitive type emotions, the message was that was weakness, but mostly I was being irrational, and it would diminish the validity of anything that I was trying to say.
Oh,
Well, you're
wow.
just being irrational. My dad would laugh. He would even shake his head like, oh, you poor little ninny. It was very, very shaming, very condescending in an environment that was also still very loud and very expressive. So it was kind of confusing because for me, especially now that I understand about the autism, when you get mixed messages and those of us on the spectrum, like we like to know what the rules are.
Yeah.
When you've got a mixed message, it's like you never quite understand. And so I would say the main message I walked away from was, well, whatever it is, you'll be shamed if you express emotions. And I don't know what the rules are about which emotions are okay. So better to keep them all under wraps.
It's so interesting how the family dynamic really affects how it shapes behavior, especially around emotions. It's so true.
So Karen, I was wondering, like in the workplace, organizations have their own cultures as well. Are there norms that you've seen that convey to people that they should keep their emotions and their feelings in the down low?
I think it's very interesting that you asked, but it's so true. You really are supposed to keep your emotions in check. Otherwise, it's deemed unprofessional.
Yeah, yeah.
Unprofessional. There is this whole thing about you can't really be authentic.
Right.
And even in nowadays, we are able to, because we want more, because we talk a lot about these states about being who you are and being authentic. But there's still this quote unquote thing where you have to make sure it's still professional. So you can't go full out to be authentic because
Mhm.
otherwise, so it's just very interesting. And I think what's interesting is things that people say for the code for when you aren't being professional. Like there's things being saying like, let's keep it professional. They'll say to everybody, or when you say something, let's keep it professional, Karen, as a warning to you as you're being unprofessional.
Mm.
Or if you're getting emotional, they can tell you are, they'll say, Karen, you need to be objective. It's like a dismissive response. Or even something like, they'll just like say, oh, she's just being passionate, or he's just oversensitive. Sometimes you even hear from people who are less sensitive, they'll say, let's just focus on the facts, because they want to just get right back down to the facts. So to me, I think those are ways that we actually get the social bringing you back into the fold of what's right and what's wrong.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. So what you were just saying about they might say about a woman, like, well, she's passionate, or which I think it's like they're sensitive, whereas they tend to say that a man is like, oh, he's just passionate about it. It was interesting you reverse that because there are gender-based differences as
Yes,
well.
gender based. Yes.
Yeah. So as a culture, we have discouraged emotional expression in boys and men for the most part, with the exception of anger and rage. No one's going to say, oh, dial it down in general. I mean, look at social media. The algorithm amplifies 5 times more angry comments and angry emojis, right, and thumbs down than it will positive statements. So
I
there's
did
this.
not know that.
Oh yeah, yeah. When anybody watched the Social Network, it was whistleblowers in Facebook talking about the algorithm and how anger is a very motivating emotion, so it is amplified by the algorithm. But in terms of gender, when women are angry or show anger, it's not seen as strength or just a strong opinion. oh, she's a crazy ass, bitch.
It's so sad because they use the word bitch.
Yeah, women, we're allowed to have some softer or more vulnerable emotions. Yes, girls and women, we are socialized more that we can have a broader range around feeling hurt or feeling sad or feeling vulnerable, and especially amongst other women. But we are discouraged from expressing our anger and our rage. We're called crazy. And whereas males are often discouraged from expressing those softer, more vulnerable emotions because then they're weak or their masculinity is challenged. So those gender-based cultural norms are in there. They're in the background. It's not like we're really thinking it. It's kind of like, Karen, what you were talking about, Chinese culture and your mom. It just goes in the background. We don't even know that that's the reason why we are keeping those certain emotions hidden.
What's also interesting is that caveman brain we talk about a lot, or that lizard brain, and how that actually influenced why we hide emotions. And that lizard brain is always trying to protect us because we don't want to get thrown out of that cave, or we don't want to not belong. So tell us about the past experiences of vulnerability.
Well, I think this idea of personal protection and not getting thrown out of the cave, there's a lot of life experiences that reinforce that. So if you've had a negative experience, and usually this starts when you're younger and you share your emotions and it is met with shaming or consternation, or you're getting in trouble, you shouldn't be doing that. Then we develop fear of that judgment. We get fear of rejection. So that causes us to keep our emotions in the hidden. And then we might have had an experience, say, in relationships where there was a power dynamic and emotions were used, they were weaponized. And so we learn, I can't share this, I can't be vulnerable. So many times where I'm trying to work with people on bringing this hidden out into the open. And one of the number one things I hear is, I don't want to disclose because it will be used against me in the future.
Wow.
And this will be like with partners.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to disclose this to my spouse because you know what? In the past, when I've disclosed, then they've turned around and used it against me. So, lock that one in the closet. Our past experience and the need to protect ourselves is a very strong driver. And it's important that we're aware that that's a driver, because we have receded into our conscious awareness why we are keeping things in the hidden. Like we know that we should. But sometimes we don't always remember where we develop the habit of doing it.
And now I can see it because I remember that happens to me too. So let me ask you the other question, which I want to know is, what do you share with your clients about the benefits of disclosing and sharing that hidden emotion or feel? Like, why should you?
Well, first of all, there is discernment. So like we keep saying about the hidden, we are not necessarily advocating that every feeling that you have should just be like barfed all over the place. There's discernment. Is it going to serve you to communicate what you're actually feeling? And the reason we want to is it's for our own well-being, like our mental health. When we are more authentic, we actually experience higher levels of mental health. We have less stress in our life. Because keeping emotions hidden, think about it this way. Emotions are energy, okay? Think about emotions, energy in motion. So emotions, it's energy. And if you are trying to keep it purposefully in the hidden, it's almost like pushing a beach ball down into a pool of water. So that takes some energy to hold that beach ball down. And that energy is now no longer available for thinking, for doing, for creativity, because it takes an enormous amount of energy to, especially the stronger the feeling, energy, the more you have to shut down. And this is one of the things people have to understand. If there's, say, a certain emotion, like you don't want to deal with grief. So I'm just going to numb out to that. your brain doesn't work that way. The brain doesn't say, oh, let's just go to the file cabinet of grief and we'll just lock that one up, but we'll have all the other emotions. No, when we start to really suppress those emotions, it suppresses our ability to connect with all emotions. So then joy becomes dampened down, happiness, all the positive emotions, appreciation, gratitude, all of those now become less accessible because we're defending against feeling grief, anger, shame, all of these other more difficult emotions. So it's important in terms of your well-being, for self-understanding, and also then when it comes to interpersonal, people can feel when you are hiding your emotions. When people read it in your body language and they're like, hey, what's going on? And you're like, I'm good. You have poker face, like nothing, good. People know, and that creates distance because now they don't understand. Now their emotions are getting triggered because they're feeling uncertainty, fear, and it starts to become a wedge in relationships. I see with married couples where each one is just progressively shutting down and shutting down and shutting down, and more distance grows. So the reason we want to disclose, it is critical to building connection and closeness and intimacy. Ultimately, trust is learning to be vulnerable, and that's all of Brene Brown's work.
I think it's interesting because when I talk about my client work, it's all about the trusting and the ability to create that safe space, ability for you to really share what your thoughts are, and the ability to really to listen, let them share their full story. You all have to have some training rules because it's a journey. And it's very interesting too, because I used to do it such that I would disclose even my emotional things to everybody until I realized it's not safe to disclose it to everybody. You got to be discerning because there's a lot of people who will just jump to fix or won't keep your confidences. You want to actually think about the people who have earned the right to hear your feelings. You got to look for the people who listen, who won't jump to fix, keep your confidence, and just share their own emotions too, because that gives you more power. Like, I'm not alone. And I think another part of this is about sharing that emotional vocabulary, because that's really hard. I used to always just say, I feel like bad, or I'm so angry. And that's just like so many other things that could really happen because there's a fabric to it. I love it because Brene Brown did a lot of this, where when you begin to start to share your true emotions, like I'm disappointed, I'm frustrated, it brings about a different level of information that allows people to relate to you, which is the first part of relating. But more importantly, it allows you to like have more context, exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And then it also allows me to understand, wow, I didn't even realize my tone is creating this within her or whatever. If it's so I think that's what's really cool about this. So what do you think?
Well, I think that building the emotional vocabulary, Karen mentioned Brene Brown's work. There's a book that she has, Atlas of the Heart, and I think she did a series on it, maybe on Netflix. You could watch it, Atlas of the Heart, where she literally is just going through and building that vocabulary around feelings. So I would highly recommend that people get that book or watch that series, because if you stop and really think about it, like try this exercise, brainstorm all the emotional vocabulary words that you are comfortable or you feel that you use on a regular basis, and then see if you can expand it. Because most of us, I was so limited because I told you in my childhood, I couldn't figure out the rules. So I just had a blanket, all emotions are scary and like dangerous and will invite shaming. So I didn't have a vocabulary. And part of my work in therapy was my therapist helped me build that vocabulary. I would tell her like how I would feel, the feeling sensation of it. I would say, oh, I don't know. It's like, it makes my head feel all squinchy. And it's like, and then I see scribbles. And I would have visuals. I would have sensations. She would say, where is it in your body? I would try to tell her, is it hot? Is it cold? And then I would give her a little context. And then she would say, is it this? And she would give me a word. And I'd be like,
so cool.
I don't know. Is it that? I'd be like, well, what's warmer than that? Or what's colder than that? Or what's to the left of that? Or what's to the right of that? And she would give me like a few words and I would just feel an aha. And I mean, it's that one. It's that word. I'm like, oh, is that what that is? And then over the years, just slowly built this vocabulary. So, and then understanding how it's related to needs, the hidden needs. If I didn't know how I was feeling about something, I pretty much didn't know what I needed. So the two had to go
Oh.
hand in hand.
I also love the fact that you actually was explaining her the body feelings. If she asks you where's it showing up, you'll start to feel them. Then you can start to understand because different emotions show up in different parts of the body.
Oh yeah, I'd be like, I've got hot fiery rocks like right here, and like, what's that? I'd always say, "What's that?"
Wow.
I am so like my therapist was so patient with me because she must have been like, "Oh my goodness."
No, but she was so excited. That's what I love about when you have a therapist to help you to explore that emotion. Because I don't think, that's why I love Brene Brown's. Like her book that she wrote was really powerful for me too.
Which
because,
one? The Atlas
the
of the Heart?
Atlas of the Heart, because it really distinguished little enough more of a language I could understand it. But it's like a full blossom of language. You didn't have a therapist that helped me do that. That book really helped a lot. So I really encourage people to go take a look at it.
We'll put a link to the book, and I'll also put a link to there's a lot of emotional vocabulary lists just online, and we'll put a link to that because there's a couple of practices that we wanted to share with you. So one practice is emotional journaling practice, and there's 3 parts, and we'll put these instructions in the show notes. The first one is to try to identify a hidden emotion that you currently have with somebody. Because, right, it's different. I may, with you, Karen, like I would share a lot more because you're one of my best friends and we have such a long relationship and I feel safe. But say I have a new friendship forming, that's going to take a little bit more time. There's probably a lot more that's hidden that as that relationships become stronger and more trusting, I would disclose more. So think about an emotion, someone that you are close to, and then maybe something that's a hidden emotion, and then rate the intensity. Is this like a 1 to a 10? Probably don't want to start with a 10, but then just write down, what do you wish that you could tell someone about it? And you can start off with, if I could be completely honest right now, how I'm feeling about XYZ. And just write it. So this is as low risk as possible. It doesn't mean you're going to disclose it to that person, but this is just to get into the practice of looking, identifying, evaluating how intense it is, and then starting off, if I could be completely honest, this is how I'm feeling. And then another really important thing when we're talking about hidden emotion is it's important to express the need to be invited to share. And then, Karen, remember, you and I had this conversation that for me, because of my life experience and because of just my introverted, intuitive brain, I have parts of me that, like, I know I feel things, but one, it makes it safe. If someone invites you, then you already know they want to hear. And then it makes me curious about myself, like, yeah, what did I tuck away in there? And then instead of just sharing my thoughts about something, it invites me to also share how I feel about it. Because a lot of us have to recover from wounding around owning our feelings and being safe talking about our feelings. Most of us in this country have wounding around this. So when people invite you and say, you know what, how you feel is really important to me, man, it's a permission giving. And if you could set up that practice and then offer to do it for the person in return, where you have a practice partner in doing this, I think that would be a really great practice to start developing. So what about you, Karen? Since like these practices are more for inner work, and since you often work in group environments, are there some practices that you do that's more in a group or an outward type practice?
One thing that I love to do with the group is structure how you share the formats. That's one thing, is when you share your format, you always do this 3-part share, which is what I teach people because it's so important that you start out with, when X situation happened, I felt the emotion, and then because XYZ. And I think when you start to disclose that way, especially to a group, it fills in the whole picture and they can understand the logic of it. So I think that's really important. But sometimes you got to do that training wheel, right? There's this practice on the progressive disclosing. So you can use how you use the I statements so that it becomes more real, but you got to find that person that's ready to help you learn and practice. Because then if you share something that what I call a green emotion, a yellow emotion, a red emotion. So a red emotion is that anger or that really like intense emotion. And the green emotion is easy. That's that happy emotion. And, it's easy to share the green emotions that you have because you've already done it before. Then you can try it with different people to see how it lands. But again, using the I statement. And then there's that yellow emotion where you're not so sure. That's when you have to share with a trusted person. And the red emotions where you're at, you just got to save it for those people who you are like really feeling close to.
If you do something like this, we would recommend that to make it progressive, say for a week, you just develop this new habit of sharing the green, the safe emotions. And you do that for maybe a week. And then maybe week 2, you commit to sharing one yellow emotion with a trusted person. And maybe you do that for a couple weeks. And then eventually, when you're feeling more confident with that, then add into your 3rd week, or maybe it's the 4th week by this point, or maybe it's the 5th week. But now it's like, okay, let me talk to my most trusted person and practice disclosing that. And you may only do that once a week because it'll be pretty draining. But the idea is that you start developing a new habit. And then that's ultimately what starts to build your tolerance for the discomfort of bringing what's hidden into the open. And what you need to be prepared for, if you start doing this, not everyone is going to respond ideally. Just be mentally prepared for that. It helps if you let the person know up front, I'm going to be working on this. It's something I want to do. Would you be willing to be a practice partner, create that safe space? But sometimes you will forget and you're just going to start saying, this feels really good. And you start to spontaneously sharing. And maybe you get a side eye, or maybe you get somebody like kind of being like, oh my God, you're so sensitive. You get that negative feedback again. If you know that's going to happen, I want you to understand you are just as much hearing that person's own fear about disclosing their hidden. I feel scared of doing it, so you should stop because just being in proximity to you, it's threatening to what I have hidden. And then I've learned to just be okay with that. Like other people are uncomfortable, that's their issue. So building resilience comes with practicing, regardless of the outcome. This is a commitment that you make based on your own values around, say, honesty with the people closest to you, better communication, connection, all of those things.
I really want to emphasize something that you said, Christina, was about it's okay. Because what's most important is you're practicing to disclose it. So even though they may react in a way that's unexpected and you feel like they're shutting you down because they're getting caught up in their own ways, it's really important that you don't take that personally and that you still do it because you're practicing it. And the practice means is you're like, I like the word experimenting because you're experimenting. And that doesn't mean and give you the excuse, which my brain used to go to, is that's the excuse. Okay, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to share this emotion. Forget this emotion. That's not being fair to yourself. So you've got to realize that you still need to express and then you'll learn from it and you'll adjust. But please do not disclose because of that one reaction you got from one person.
Yeah, and folks, I want to make a real quick distinction here because we have been using the words interchangeably, emotions and feelings. So emotions is that energy piece of it. It's the sensations that we have. So the sensations of grief, the sensations of anger, the sensations of joy. When we're talking about emotions, it's that energy you feel in your body. And when we say feelings, what I want you to understand is feelings are in some ways kind of like a judgment. It's a value, like happy. I'm happy about this. I'm angry about this. Okay, it's a descriptive word, but it is actually, according to Carl Jung, rational. It's rational because it is tied to a thought process.
I love how you said that.
Bad to me. This feels unfair. I feel betrayed. Betrayal is an evaluation and a judgment. So you're trying to share your feelings, which is your qualitatively based evaluation of something, and someone comes back and says you're being emotional. Don't assume that they're accurate. people are uncomfortable even with feelings, even just saying the words, I feel betrayed by that, you will probably have some of the emotion that goes with that feeling. And people who are uncomfortable with emotions will want to shut it down. And this is where you cultivate some courage to say, my feelings are valid. This is my conclusion. This is my assessment. This is my reality and the truth for me. And so understanding that difference, you have your feelings, how you feel about something, and then there's the emotion that goes with the feelings. And we're really talking about getting better at disclosing the feelings and honoring the emotions that go with it, but not getting hijacked by the emotions. Because when you get hijacked, then you usually cannot communicate your feelings as clearly and as effectively.
We have to emphasize in this world is the fact that feelings are valid. And that's why you need to share it, because people don't know what you're feeling until you share.
Yeah.
Right? So cool. So do you want to end up with closing for us?
Well, let's just recap. The main points is that it's important to identify when you need to disclose emotions or your feelings in the service of your goals, your relationships, so that you are not just reacting out of that primitive survival brain and your fears and anxieties. It does require discernment, timing. Is it a trusted person? Is it the appropriate person? And why I say appropriate person is I know some people struggle where they've hidden their feelings and emotions from the person they're having the feelings with, but they go and disclose it to somebody else.
Oh, yeah.
In a gossipy kind of venting, they go vent to somebody else. So that can be a stress management tool, but ultimately you have to say, but is this getting me towards my goal of improving that relationship? And understand it takes practice, and it does get easier over time. Like I said, I didn't even have a vocabulary. And now that I have a vocabulary and I've done the work on courage and comfort with vulnerability, it's a lot easier, and then it doesn't feel so threatening. And so we want to give you all a challenge this week. Pick a feeling or an emotion you experienced today and share it with somebody that you trust. Just, have that be something you commit to this week. And then again, we would love to hear what you thought about this. Is a really challenging topic, and I'm sure you have a lot of questions or situations. They're like, oh my God, how would I apply this? We would love to see that in the comments, and then we can respond to it in an upcoming episode.
And I would also love to hear in the comments, what is an emotion that you find hardest to share?
Well, folks, that wraps up this episode. So until next time, remember, stay kind, stay curious, and we will see you next week.
Bye, y'all.
Bye, everybody.